There are two kinds of people in this world: those who walk into a room and command it, and those who shrink into the shadows, whispering about the ones who do. And then there's you. You don't have to beg for attention. You don't chase approval. Your presence alone shifts the air, turns heads, and forces even your quietest enemies to take notice. But here's the irony. While you've been minding your own path, building your own empire, some people have been losing sleep over your existence. They can't figure out why you stand so unshaken. Why, despite their doubts, their side eyes, their weak attempts to undermine you, you only seem to thrive. That's the part that haunts them the most. See, they thought throwing stones would slow you down, but instead, you built a throne with them. They wanted you to stumble, but they forgot one thing. Pressure only makes the chosen ones shine harder. You've probably felt it. The lingering stares when you walk into a room, the unnecessary tension when you speak, the forced laughter when you're around. That's not by accident. That's the weight of your presence pressing against people who aren't ready to handle it. Some are drawn to it, unable to look away. Others are intimidated, unsure how to approach. But the most interesting ones, the ones who act indifferent, they're the ones studying you the hardest. They don't admire you openly, but they analyze every move, hoping to decode what makes you different. And that's where they'll always lose, because what you have isn't something they can fake, borrow, or steal. Your energy is not loud, but it is undeniable. It doesn't scream for attention, yet it silences rooms. It's the kind of power that makes people feel exposed, not because you try to, but because standing next to someone who truly knows themselves forces others to confront the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. That's why some people admire you from a distance, afraid to step too close. Your presence reminds them of the work they haven't done, the strength they haven't found, and the self-worth they haven't claimed. You don't just exist, you challenge them without saying a word. And here's the truth. The harder they try to ignore you, the more impossible you become to forget. You live in their mind, rent-free. Not because you asked to, but because they made the mistake of underestimating you. That's what happens when the chosen rise. Those who doubted you are left standing in the dust of their own miscalculations. So let them watch. Let them talk. Let them try to figure you out. Your only job is to keep rising, keep building, and keep proving that their doubts were never strong enough to break you. And if you're ready to step fully into this power, like and subscribe. The ones who are meant to understand this message already feel it, and the ones who don't, well, they'll realize soon enough. Number 1, stop dimming your energy. Own the power that silences a room. There's something about you that speaks before you even say a word. A force, an unshakable presence, an energy so potent that it commands attention without trying. You don't have to seek approval. You don't have to beg for recognition. Your existence alone demands it. Some people sense it the second you step into a room, a quiet but undeniable shift in the atmosphere, as if the air itself acknowledges your presence. That's not a coincidence. That's power, and power, real power, is felt long before it's spoken. Your energy is not just an aura, it's a silent invitation and an unspoken warning. It tells the world exactly who you are without you needing to prove anything. It's not about what you wear, what you own, or how loudly you speak. It's about the weight of your presence. It's the confidence in your stride, the way you take up space like you were born to own it. The way your silence speaks louder than empty words. But here's what most people won't admit. This energy terrifies them. Not because you're doing anything to intimidate, but because standing in the presence of someone who truly knows their worth forces others to confront how little they know theirs. That's the part they can't handle. That's why some act distant, some overcompensate with forced laughter, and some pretend they don't notice you at all. But make no mistake, they notice, they feel it, and no matter how much they try to ignore it, they can't escape the fact that your existence alone is a mirror exposing the cracks in their own confidence. For some, your presence is like standing too close to a fire, warm, alluring, but too intense to handle. They want to be near it, but they fear getting burned. Others don't know whether to admire you or resent you. And the most confused ones? They'll do both. They'll watch from the shadows, analyzing your every move, hoping to figure out the secret behind what makes you, you. What they don't understand is this: there is no secret, there is no trick, no performance. Your magnetism comes from something they can't copy, true, unshakable self-acceptance. You don't need validation, and that alone is enough to make them uneasy. People are used to others chasing approval, conforming, playing small to be liked. But you? You exist in a league of your own, and that disrupts everything they thought they knew about confidence and power. And here's where it gets even better. The more they resist acknowledging you, the deeper you get into their mind. You become an unsolved mystery, a presence they can't shake, a reminder of everything they haven't become yet. That's why some will admire you in silence, while others will try to downplay your presence just to make themselves feel better. Either way, you win. Because while they struggle with their insecurities, you continue to rise, untouched, undeterred, unstoppable. So let them stare, let them overthink, let them question. Your energy is not an invitation for approval. It's a test of who's strong enough to handle being in your orbit. And the reality? Most of them aren't. Number 2, break free from fear. How to make them step up instead of shying away. There's something about you that makes people hesitate, not because you're unapproachable, not because you're distant, but because your presence alone is enough to shake their confidence. You've probably noticed it, the way some people linger around you but never quite step forward, the way conversations almost start, but then fizzle out into nervous laughter or empty small talk. It's not a coincidence. It's not your imagination. They admire you, they're drawn to you, but their fear of rejection is greater than their desire to take the risk. You are the standard they fear they can't reach. The way you carry yourself, with certainty, with grace, with a quiet yet undeniable power, sets you apart. And that's exactly what makes them hesitate. You don't seek validation, you don't chase approval, and you don't wait for anyone to tell you you're enough. That level of self-assurance is rare, and for some, it's terrifying. Because in their world, confidence is borrowed, not built. They rely on external approval, on social cues, on the reassurance of fitting in. But you operate on a different frequency, and that makes them second-guess every move. They run scenarios in their head. What if they say something foolish? What if they embarrass themselves? What if they aren't good enough? Their insecurities scream louder than their curiosity, so they stay in the background, watching, analyzing, but never stepping forward. And the irony? The very thing that makes them hesitate, the fear of being exposed, is exactly why they admire you in the first place. You don't fake confidence. You don't pretend to be something you're not. You are unapologetically yourself. And that's a level of realness they crave, but don't yet know how to embody. They mistake your self-sufficiency for perfection. They assume that because you move through life with assurance, you must have everything figured out, that you don't experience doubt, that you don't need anyone. And they know that if they tried to fake it, if they approached you wearing a mask instead of authenticity, you'd see right through it. And that scares them more than rejection itself. But here's the truth. It's not you that makes them feel unworthy. It's their own self-doubt, their own hesitation, their own belief that they don't measure up. You don't build walls, they build them themselves. And instead of stepping up, they settle for admiration from afar. They convince themselves that the distance is safer, that watching you is easier than facing what your presence makes them feel. So let them watch, let them hesitate, let them wrestle with the weight of their own insecurities. Because the ones who are meant to step forward will. The ones who are ready to rise to your level will. And the ones who remain in the background, trapped in their fear, that's their choice. You were never meant to dim your light to make them comfortable. Keep shining, keep rising, and let the hesitant ones deal with the weight of their own missed chances. Number 3, self-love is a threat. But here's why you shouldn't shrink for anyone. There's a reason why your presence unsettles people, why your confidence feels like a threat, and why your name lingers on the tongues of those who claim not to care. It's not arrogance, it's not ego. It's the simple fact that you don't need anyone to complete you, and that shakes the very foundation of those who have spent their lives depending on outside validation to feel whole. You've built something they can't fake, self-worth. And that is the most revolutionary act in a world obsessed with approval. Loving yourself unapologetically isn't just a choice, it's an act of defiance. It disrupts the script society has written, the one that says you should shrink, dim your light, or wait for someone else to grant you permission to be great. When you move with certainty, when you walk into a room without seeking a single glance of approval, it forces people to question their own insecurities. Some admire you for it, others resent you because it highlights what they lack. Either way, they can't ignore you. They whisper, they analyze, they try to pick apart your confidence as if it's something that can be explained away. But what truly frustrates them is that your self-love isn't a performance, it's real. You're not just pretending to be strong, you are strong. You don't just talk about self-worth, you embody it. And for those who are still trapped in the cycle of seeking external validation, that's terrifying. They've spent so long shaping themselves into what others want that they can't fathom what it means to just be. Some will call you unapproachable, but let's be honest, that's just an excuse. What they really mean is that they don't know how to handle someone who doesn't beg for their approval. Your boundaries make them uncomfortable because they're used to people who bend, who chase, who need constant reassurance. But you stand firm. You've drawn a line between what's real and what's fake, between what you accept and what you refuse to tolerate. And that's the part that haunts them. People will mistake your self-love for arrogance, your standards for walls, your refusal to settle for coldness. But that's because they've been conditioned to believe that confidence must always come with a catch. They expect you to need them, to seek validation, to compromise yourself to fit in. When you don't, when you continue to rise without their approval, they're left wondering how you do it. So let them wonder, let them talk, let them misinterpret your strength however they need to. The truth remains unchanged. You are not here to shrink. You are not here to make others comfortable at the expense of your own power. And whether they admire you or resent you, they will always feel your presence. Because self-love isn't just personal, it's a force, and once you step into it fully, you become untouchable. If you know this truth, if you feel this power, then this is just the beginning. Like and subscribe, because the journey to becoming unstoppable is only getting started. Number 4, they can't define you, and that's the secret to staying irresistible. Some people are easy to read, predictable, and neatly categorized. Then there's you, unwritten, undefined, and completely untamed. You are not a puzzle to be solved, yet people can't help but try. They analyze your every move, hoping to pin you down, to fit you into some box that makes sense to them. But every time they think they've figured you out, you shatter their assumptions with effortless precision. Your presence alone is an enigma. You move through life with a quiet confidence, never desperate to prove yourself, yet impossible to overlook. Some people mistake this for contradiction. How can someone be both intense and calm, powerful yet composed? What they don't realize is that their confusion is the very proof of your power. You don't follow a script. You don't dilute yourself to make others comfortable. You are the storm and the stillness, the mystery that lingers long after you've left the room. And that's exactly what unsettles people. They are used to labels, to roles they can easily categorize. But you break their system. You challenge their expectations of what confidence, strength, and presence should look like. You make them question what they think they know about people, about energy, about power itself. They watch you, fascinated yet frustrated, trying to dissect what makes you different. They replay conversations in their minds, searching for answers. But what they don't understand is that your power isn't in a single trait or moment. It's in the layers they'll never fully uncover. Every glance, every word, every subtle movement tells a deeper story. And just when they think they've reached the core, they realize they've only scratched the surface. That's why they keep coming back. They can't let it go. You occupy their thoughts not because you ask to, but because your presence commands it. You are proof that true power doesn't need an explanation. And while they waste time trying to decode you, you continue to evolve, to grow, to sharpen yourself even further. They're left chasing shadows, stuck in their own frustration, while you move forward untouched. So let them wonder. Let them try and fail to define you. Your power isn't in their understanding. It's in your refusal to be anything but limitless. Keep being the one they can't ignore, the presence they can't predict, the force they will never be able to fully grasp. Because in a world desperate to categorize everything, being undefinable is the greatest power you can hold. Number 5. When criticism masks admiration, how to see through the jealousy. Some admiration is too raw to be spoken out loud, too unsettling to be acknowledged, so instead it wears a mask of indifference, of criticism, of feigned superiority. But make no mistake, those who whisper the loudest about you are often the ones watching the closest. They don't just notice you, they study you. Every move you make, every success you claim, every effortless display of confidence, it rattles something deep inside them. It's not that they truly despise you. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But to admit that you inspire them would mean confronting the painful reality of their own shortcomings. It would mean acknowledging that they've spent more time doubting themselves than becoming what they secretly wish to be. And that is a truth they are not yet strong enough to face. So instead, they turn admiration into criticism. They pick apart your success, not because it's flawed, but because it reminds them of how much they've settled. They find ways to dismiss your confidence, not because it's fake, but because it forces them to see how much they lack it. They tell themselves that you got lucky, that you aren't as great as people think, that you're too much of this or not enough of that. But underneath every passive-aggressive remark, behind every eye roll, beneath every forced attempt to downplay your impact, there's a silent confession: I wish I had what they have. Because what truly unnerves them isn't you, it's the mirror you hold up to their own wasted potential. It's easier to critique than to change. It's easier to call someone arrogant than to develop real confidence. It's easier to label someone too ambitious than to admit they've been living on autopilot. And so, rather than choosing to learn from your presence, they choose to resist it. But resistance never stops evolution. And while they waste their energy trying to find cracks in you, you continue to rise, untouched, unshaken, and entirely out of their reach. They don't realize it yet, but their attempts to tear you down only amplify your presence. Their criticisms only make more people notice you. Their efforts to discredit you only solidify your impact. That's the irony of those who can't stomach greatness. They spend so much time fixated on it, they end up fueling it. So let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them analyze every move you make. Because while they hide behind their mask of criticism, you're out here living, growing and becoming everything they told themselves they could never be. And one day, when they finally have the courage to be honest with themselves, they'll realize the truth. They weren't irritated by you. They were intimidated by what you represented, and by then, you'll be too far ahead for their opinions to even matter. Number 6. You're a mirror. But here's how to handle those who can't face their own reflection. You don't just exist, you reflect. Your presence is like a mirror, and not everyone is ready for what it shows them. Some people will admire you, some will resent you, but make no mistake, no one is indifferent to you. Because when they stand near you, they don't just see you, they see everything they could be, and everything they aren't. Your confidence isn't just confidence, it's a confrontation. Your success isn't just success, it's an unspoken challenge. You walk into a room, and without even saying a word, you force people to ask themselves questions they've spent years avoiding. Why haven't I done that? What's holding me back? Why do they move so freely while I stay stuck? These are the kinds of thoughts you stir up without even trying, and for many, that's terrifying, because it's easier to live in denial than to face the truth staring back at them. Some will try to act unaffected. They'll pretend not to notice, pretend you don't exist, pretend your presence doesn't shake them. But watch closely. Those are the ones studying you the hardest. They're the ones picking apart your every move, not because they dislike you, but because they don't understand how you broke free while they remain caged by their own limitations. The irony? They'll call you intimidating, arrogant, unapproachable, anything to convince themselves that you're the problem, not them. Because if they admit the truth, that their discomfort isn't about you, but about what you make them realize about themselves, they'd have to take responsibility for their own choices. And most people aren't ready for that kind of self-awareness. But that's not your burden to carry. You were never meant to shrink to make others comfortable. Your presence alone is a force, a silent revolution that challenges the weak, awakens the strong, and haunts the ones stuck in between. You're not responsible for how others react to your power. The ones who are ready will rise with you. The ones who aren't will find excuses to stay behind. Either way, your path remains the same, forward, unstoppable. This is the weight of being chosen. You don't just inspire, you expose. You don't just lead, you reveal. And you don't just succeed, you remind others of what they could have if they had the courage to demand more from life. That's why they admire you in silence. That's why they can't stop watching. And that's why, even in their resistance, you live in their minds, rent-free. So let them wrestle with their own reflection. Let them hesitate in the presence of someone who refuses to play small. You didn't come here to make others feel comfortable. You came here to become everything they once told you was impossible. And if you feel this truth in your bones, if you know this power is yours to claim, then this is just the beginning. Like and subscribe, because the ones who were meant to rise will understand, and the ones who don't, they'll keep watching anyway. Number 7. Your presence forces change. Why people feel exposed around you. When you walk into a room, something shifts. It's not loud, not forceful, yet it's impossible to ignore. You don't just take up space, you define it, and that's what unsettles people the most. You are a walking contradiction to everything they've convinced themselves is normal. While they've played it safe, followed the rules, and stayed inside their comfort zones, you've carved your own path, unapologetically. Without a single word, your presence forces them to look at themselves, and that's where the discomfort begins. You see, most people go through life making choices not based on what they truly want, but based on what feels easiest. They settle, they shrink, they follow patterns laid out for them, never questioning whether they actually belong there. And then there's you, the undeniable proof that another way exists. You don't seek approval, yet you get it. You don't beg for respect, yet it's given. You refuse to blend in, yet somehow you're the one they can't stop watching. It's not about arrogance. It's not about proving a point. It's simply about being, and that alone disrupts their entire perspective. When they see you, they see what's possible, and that realization, it shakes them to their core. They start asking themselves dangerous questions, the kind they've avoided for years. Am I really living the life I want? Why have I been holding myself back? What if I stopped playing small? And that's where the battle begins. Some will feel inspired by you, taking your existence as proof that they too can break free. They'll admire you, study you, and whether they admit it or not, use your presence as motivation to finally take that leap. But others? They won't be ready for the reflection you cast. Instead of seeing your confidence as a challenge to level up, they'll see it as a threat to their carefully built illusions. That's when you'll notice the tension, the uneasy stares, the sudden silence when you speak, the forced indifference. They want to pretend you don't exist, but they can't. They want to dismiss you, but something about you lingers in their mind. They might even criticize, trying to poke holes in what they don't understand. But deep down, they know the truth. You aren't the problem. Their unfulfilled potential is. And that's the thing about magnetic people. We don't just attract, we awaken. We hold up a mirror that forces others to face the reality they've been avoiding. And whether they use that as fuel for their own transformation or as an excuse to resist, that's on them. Your only job is to keep being exactly who you are, because no matter what they say, no matter how much they try to ignore it, your existence has already planted the seed. And once the mind has seen the truth, it can never go back. Number 8. Stop being just another face, the rare energy that separates you from the rest. Some things in life can be replicated, imitated, or borrowed, but true rarity can't be faked. And you are rare. You are the exception in a world drowning in copies. While others scramble to fit into labels, polish themselves for approval, and adjust their personalities like a new outfit, you walk in owning yourself completely. That's what unsettles people. That's what makes them stop and stare. It's not just about confidence. It's about the quiet certainty you carry, the unshakable self-awareness that whispers, "I don't need to impress you to be valuable." See, most people don't know who they are without a mirror reflecting back what the world wants them to be. They spend their lives curating an identity, picking and choosing traits, adjusting their voice, modifying their actions just to blend in. But you don't need a script. You don't water yourself down. You don't try to soften your edges to make people comfortable. That kind of rawness is unsettling to those who have built their entire existence around pretense, and that's why they're drawn to you. Even the ones who claim they don't notice, even the ones who act indifferent, they see you. They feel the weight of your presence, because deep down, they know there's something different about you. You don't need validation to feel valuable. You don't need an audience to know your worth. While they spend their energy seeking approval, you spend yours growing, refining, and evolving into a version of yourself that is real, not rehearsed. This is what creates your gravitational pull. People are obsessed with what they can't define. You don't fit into a mold, so they can't categorize you. You don't follow trends, so they can't predict your next move. And that makes you unforgettable. They may not always understand you, but they can't ignore you. Your presence lingers in their thoughts because you represent something they haven't mastered: true self-acceptance. It's easy to mistake this for arrogance, but that's just another defense mechanism. When people see someone who refuses to seek approval, it forces them to question why they've spent their entire lives chasing it. It makes them uncomfortable because it reveals how trapped they really are. And rather than admit that to themselves, they project, calling you intimidating, distant, or even unapproachable. But that's not your burden to carry. You are rare, and with that comes the responsibility of standing firm in who you are. Some will admire you. Some will envy you. Some will spend their lives trying to figure out what makes you different, but none of them will ever be able to replace you. So let them wonder. Let them analyze. Let them try to dissect what can't be replicated. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't remember those who fit in. It remembers those who dare to stand out. If you know this is you, if you feel this truth, like and subscribe. Because the rare ones, we don't just exist, we shift the entire game. Number 9. When intimidation is actually respect. How to own your unshakable power. Power unsettles people, not because it's aggressive, but because it's undeniable. When you walk into a room, your presence alone shifts the energy. You don't have to say a word for people to notice you, and that's what makes them uneasy. It's not fear in the traditional sense, it's recognition. They see something in you they haven't mastered within themselves. Unshakable self-assurance, an energy that doesn't bend, and a presence that refuses to shrink. Some will call it arrogance, but that's just their insecurity speaking. The truth is, intimidation isn't always about fear. It's about respect, disguised as discomfort. Your confidence forces them to question why they've been playing it small, why they've allowed doubt to hold them back, why they've accepted less than what they deserve. And rather than face those questions, they project. They say you're too much, too different, or hard to approach. But that's not your problem. That's their struggle with the weight of their own limitations. Deep down, they don't actually dislike you, they admire you. Even the ones who seem the most critical are just people who wish they had your audacity, your presence, your ability to stand firm in your worth. And it eats at them, knowing they don't have the courage to do the same. But here's the thing. You weren't made to fit into their comfort zones. You weren't meant to play small so others feel safe. You are a reminder of what happens when someone refuses to dim their light for anyone. And that will always demand respect, whether they admit it or not. So let them be intimidated. Let them wrestle with what your existence forces them to see. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be unapologetically unstoppable. Number 10. The mystery factor. Why keeping them guessing puts you in control. There's an unspoken power in what you don't say. In a world where people overshare, desperate for attention, you move differently. You don't lay all your cards on the table. You don't explain yourself to those who haven't earned the right to understand you. And that drives people insane. You're like a book with missing pages. Every glimpse you offer is enough to intrigue, but never enough to satisfy. They want more. They want to know what fuels your confidence, what thoughts linger behind your silence, what it feels like to exist in a way that doesn't beg for approval. And that's exactly why they can't stop thinking about you. Most people are predictable. You keep them guessing. Your presence alone leaves unanswered questions. They try to label you, but you never quite fit. They want to categorize you, but every time they think they have you figured out, you reveal another layer, one they weren't prepared for. That's why you're unforgettable. You don't follow the script. You don't make yourself easily accessible. And for those who are used to reading people like open books, you are their greatest mystery. This isn't about playing games or pretending to be something you're not. This is about knowing your worth. When you understand your own value, you don't hand out access to just anyone. You don't spill every secret, reveal every thought, or explain your every move. You make people earn the right to know you. That's why they keep coming back, why they analyze your words long after you've spoken them, why your presence lingers even when you're gone. They don't just admire you, they're obsessed with unraveling the enigma that is you. And the best part, they never will. Number 11, your success exposes excuses. How to keep thriving while others watch. Success exposes people. Not just your success, but what it represents. See, when you rise, when you break through every obstacle, when you refuse to be held back by fear, it does something to those who have spent their entire lives making excuses. Your victories, whether big or small, are reminders of everything they could have done but didn't. And that stings. They don't envy you in the way most people think. It's not just about your achievements. It's about what those achievements force them to see. Your success is a mirror, and for some, that reflection is unbearable. It shows them every missed opportunity, every time they let fear win, every excuse they whispered to themselves instead of taking action. So, rather than face that truth, they keep their distance. They'll watch from the sidelines, silently taking in every move you make, torn between admiration and resentment. Not for you, but for themselves. You've probably noticed it. The sudden shift in energy when you talk about your progress. The awkward half-smile when you share your wins. The way certain people avoid acknowledging your growth, not because they don't see it, but because they can't handle what it makes them feel. Your elevation challenges their stagnation. Your success reminds them that they had the same 24 hours, the same opportunities to take a step forward, but they didn't. And that's why some will choose to admire you from afar, stuck in their own cycle of what-ifs. But that's their battle, not yours. You were never meant to stay at their level. You were built to rise, to shatter limits, to become living proof that excuses are nothing but self-imposed chains. Let them watch. Let them wonder. The chosen never wait for permission to succeed. Number 12. Never seek validation. Again, why self-love makes you untouchable. There's a certain power in knowing your worth, one that can't be shaken, borrowed, or broken. You don't search for validation, and that alone makes you unstoppable. While the world conditions people to beg for approval, to measure their value through the eyes of others, you stand as proof that self-love isn't something you seek. It's something you own, and that makes you untouchable. Your presence is unsettling to those still trapped in the cycle of needing to be seen, to feel significant. They crave external confirmation, while you walk with a quiet confidence that needs no audience. You don't chase admiration, yet you receive it effortlessly. You don't demand attention, yet people can't look away. Not because you're trying to be anything special, but because you embody something so rare: true self-acceptance. And that is both inspiring and intimidating. For many, watching someone like you is like looking into a mirror they weren't prepared for. It forces them to face their own insecurities, their own unspoken fears. They see the way you carry yourself, whole, unshaken, unbothered, and it highlights everything they have yet to embrace within themselves. It makes them wonder, what if I could be that free? But instead of finding their own strength, they hesitate. Some admire you, some resent you, and some try to downplay your presence to protect their own ego. At the end of the day, those who tried to ignore your presence will find themselves unable to forget it. Your energy lingers, your confidence unsettles, and your self-love challenges everything they thought they knew. You don't just exist, you shift perspectives, disrupt insecurities, and redefine power without saying a word. So keep walking in your truth. Keep embracing the strength that sets you apart. And if you know you're one of the chosen ones, like this video, subscribe, and join a community that thrives on authenticity. This journey is only getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.